Hello everyone, tonight we are stepping into a version of Earth that not even mammoths would recognize. You're standing on bare ground. No snow, no ice, not even grass. The air is thick with something you can't name. Something older. Behind you. Nothing. Ahead of you, shadows longer than time, curling over a horizon that hasn't quite finished forming yet. And here's your first clue. The world you're walking into doesn't know about mammoths because they haven't been invented. Not yet. You're walking before them. So far back, you'd need to scroll down Earth's resume for a week just to get to this era. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the timeline. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle across the edge of a shallow, silent ocean. It doesn't roar yet, it hums. The sky overhead is pale and soft, like someone's dimmed the sun on purpose. The clouds aren't really clouds, they're more like ghostly smudges. Water vapor experimenting with mood. There's no grass underfoot, no flowers, no bird song, nothing flaps or chirps. Instead, the land stretches out like a peeled fruit. Wet, raw, pulpy in places, dusty in others. Earth isn't quite sure what it wants to be. There are no mammoths here because mammals don't exist yet. Reptiles haven't shown up either. In fact, you haven't even reached the age of fish with jaws. Instead, you're surrounded by armor-plated weirdos. Trilobites crawl like sentient bottle caps over sand so fresh it's never been stepped on. Every so often, a tube-shaped creature slides along beneath your feet, invisible under layers of silt and mud. They don't bother you. You don't bother them. Up on a low rise, you spot something shimmering. A gelatinous heap of translucent matter, not quite an animal, not quite a puddle. It's alive, but only technically. These are the rulers of the time, simple, patient, utterly alien. A lobopod twitches near your ankle. Its legs are stubby, like a plush toy dragged through soup. You don't flinch. It doesn't know what fear is yet. The temperature is, we'll say, weirdly neutral. Neither hot nor cold. The kind of climate where you could nap forever if something didn't evolve teeth. But don't worry, nothing here wants to bite you. Not yet. That idea hasn't caught on. Every few minutes, the land gives a low groan. Like it's stretching, and that's because it is. Tectonic plates haven't decided where they want to sit. The continents are still organizing a seating chart. Right now, most of the world's land is mushed together in a hulking, crumpled mess called Pannotia. It's not pretty, but it's home. You kneel beside a shallow pool. It's rimmed with bacterial mats, slimy neon bubbling softly. You poke it. It smells like wet coins and hope. These microbial colonies have been around for billions of years, and they'll outlast everything in this episode. Honestly, if Earth handed out loyalty points, these guys would be platinum tier. Now and then, you see things moving, but only just. Ripples that don't match the breeze. Trails in the mud that curve like cursive. Something has passed or is about to. It's hard to tell. Time is thick here. Minutes drip like syrup. You glance skyward. The sun seems too big, too close. There's a yellow clarity to it that makes you squint. No ozone yet. No sunburn lotion either. Ultraviolet radiation slaps your skin like it's angry you exist. Better stay in the shadows of those towering bacterial cliffs. Yes, cliffs. Stromatolites stack up like ancient stone lasagna, waving ever so slightly as they photosynthesize without a care. Historians still debate whether animals in this time had true nervous systems. Some of them seem to react to light. Others just sort of absorb it. One creature you pass looks like a half-deflated balloon pulsing faintly. You try to give it a name, but your brain keeps saying, nope. Odd fact time. Did you know that some of Earth's earliest skeletons were made from silica, not bone? That's right. Some of the oldest life forms were basically walking sandpaper. Tough luck if you had soft feet. A shadow moves, you spin. but it's just a breeze teasing a towering fungal stalk. Yes, fungi back then some grew as tall as trees. No leaves, no bark, just soft towering poles that sway gently like prehistoric dancers. You get the feeling they know something, something old. The land is wet in strange ways, not muddy exactly, more like the whole planet is in a state of partial soup. Rivers aren't really rivers, they're experiments. And lakes. Those are just puddles that refuse to dry. Beneath your feet, continents begin to heave. The planet is warming. Glaciers from the last snowball Earth are retreating. But the concept of snow as we know it, that's still a future feature. Right now, you're in a world where cold is theoretical. You take a breath and it tastes like iron. There's more CO2 than oxygen here. No wonder most things squish instead of sprint. You start to feel a little lightheaded. Or maybe that's just the existential panic of realizing how long ago this is. Suddenly, a tiny ripple breaks the stillness in a tide pool. Something skitters. You catch a flash of segmented limbs, tiny bristles. Maybe an eye? It disappears. But you saw it, life testing boundaries. Curious, quiet. You look out again across the steaming plain. It's eerie how empty it seems, but there's life here, just shy. You're surrounded by stories too old for language. This is Earth's whisper phase. No roars yet, just murmurs in the mud. And remember, all of this came before snowflakes ever danced on a mammoth's fur. You wander deeper into the stillness where the ground firms into something less like sludge and more like a forgotten dream. The terrain rolls softly, not with hills, but with the low swells of an earth still reshaping itself from the inside. You enter a forest, but not one you'd recognize. There's no crunch of leaves, no scent of pine, not even a single squirrel to scold you. These are forests that remember nothing. Towering forms rise around you, not quite trees, not quite fungi. Some stretch skyward like melted candle wax branching into flat-topped fans that ooze moisture down their spines. Others resemble giant asparagus stalks knobbled and veined with pale green stripes. This is a forest without flowers, without fruit, without memory. Everything here grows, but nothing thinks. You step carefully between the bases of ancient club mosses, Lycopodiopsida. If you want to impress no one at a dinner party and realize that the soil you're walking on doesn't exist in the way we understand it. There's no topsoil yet, no worms to churn it, no roots weaving through it like thread. This ground is barely a suggestion built from compressed detritus, half-decayed material and ambition. One of the oddest things, nothing here truly rots. The fungi haven't yet figured out how to break down lignin, the tough stuff in plant walls. So when a tree dies, it doesn't decompose, it just lingers. Imagine entire forests collapsing and piling into vast, mossy heaps, preserved like forgotten laundry. This ancient recycling problem will eventually gift us coal, but for now it's just clutter. You run your fingers along the bark of a lepidodendron. It's not really bark, more like scaled armor. Geometric patterns cover it, repeating like ancient wallpaper. These trees shoot upward with desperate haste, some growing 10 feet in a year. Fast, vertical, brittle. They're built to win the race to the sun until they snap in a breeze. The air hums thick with humidity. Your shirt sticks to your back. This is a greenhouse world stuffed to the clouds with carbon dioxide. You feel like you're inside a slow cooker, and honestly, the planet is. It's cooking up future ecosystems, just not for you. Overhead, strange shapes dart between branches. Not birds. Not yet. Giant dragonflies skim through the air, their wings wide and slow. One lands on a branch beside you, its wingspan nearly the length of your forearm. It clicks quietly like it's typing on a tiny keyboard, then lifts off without concern. Welcome to the Carboniferous. Historians still debate whether these ancient insects were solitary drifters or part of vast migratory waves. Some believe they floated between swamps like airborne leaves. Others think they guarded territories the size of football fields. Either way, they own the skies before feathers were even a rumor. There's movement near your foot. A low-slung millipede the size of a corgi undulates over the leaf litter. It doesn't seem to mind you. You wonder what it eats. There aren't any fruiting bodies around, no fungi with plump little caps. Maybe it just chews on dead ferns. Maybe it chews on regret. Hard to say. Odd fact time, some of these ancient trees used to photosynthesize with their trunks, not their leaves. Basically, they turned their entire bodies into solar panels. Talk about commitment to the bit. You pause beneath a thicket of horsetail plants. Their hollow stalks rise like thin chimneys, some nearly 20 feet tall. You touch one and it feels like rough paper. The whole thing is segmented, jointed like a toy, and snaps off easily in your hand. It smells faintly of rain and ancient ambition. It hits you suddenly, this place has no seeds. Everything reproduces by spores misted into the air like ghost pollen. You're breathing them in constantly. No wonder your sinuses feel prehistoric. There's no buzzing of bees, no flit of hummingbirds, no seductive nectar. It's reproduction via broadcasting chaos and chance. Earth is playing the numbers game. The light shifts, not because of weather, but because of Earth's lazy spin. The sun filters through the towering plants in golden sheets, cutting shadows like theater lights. It's beautiful in a way that feels staged, like nature is auditioning for something it doesn't understand. A thick log lies ahead, half-buried, surface intact after what might be centuries. You sit on it. It sighs slightly under your weight. The insects around you drone softly, a sound somewhere between a lullaby and a warning. Something flutters near your head. Not quite a moth, not quite a nightmare. Its wings shimmer, but it makes no sound. You duck reflexively. It doesn't care. There are no mammals here. Not even the idea of them. No fur. No milk. Warm blood hasn't occurred to anyone. The forest breathes in slow waves, indifferent to your presence. And yet, you're not entirely unwelcome. You feel it. This place doesn't remember, but it accepts. It offers no threat because threat hasn't fully evolved yet. Everything here is growing because that's all it knows how to do. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine these towering plants under snow. You can't. Snow is still a myth. This earth has never seen a flake, never known winter in the way we define it. Glaciations have come and gone, yes, but not here, not now. This forest isn't a permanent greenhouse lullaby. But you and we're here to remember what it can't. You move on, trailing your hand along the spongy trunks of trees that never dropped a single leaf in their lives. The air behind you clings like a memory that doesn't want to fade. But ahead, things begin to shift. Less forest, more suggestion. Shapes in the earth that don't match anything you've seen before. You're entering the realm of the vanished, the creatures that left no bones, no skulls, no teeth. Just clues, hints, and impressions. You step across a flat slab of sandstone where the sun hits just right, and there they are, faint outlines, curled and delicate. As if something lay down in soft sediment, exhaled once and disappeared forever. These are the ghosts of the soft-bodied, the beasts without names or bones. This is the Ediacaran. The ground around you bears strange marks. Ovals, fronds, spirals. You crouch to inspect one and realize it's not a fossil of a body, but of an imprint. The creature itself was too soft to fossilize, too tender, too jelly-like. It pressed itself into the wet earth, left a vague signature, and evaporated into history. You know what's worse than being extinct? Being extinct and mysterious. And that's what these things are. Dickinsonia, Sprigina, Tribrachidium. Their names sound like high-end skincare products or cursed herbs. They're some of the oldest multicellular organisms we've ever found, and we're still arguing over what they even were. Historians still debate whether these creatures were animals, fungi, or some completely different kingdom of life we haven't recognized. Were they mobile, stationary? Did they eat? Did they even have mouths? The truth is, they don't line up cleanly with anything that came after. They're Earth's beta test. The version before vertebrates, before symmetry, before logic. You crouch beside one. It looks like a quilted mattress, about a foot long, ribbed from end to end, oval in shape. Dickinsonia. It probably glided over microbial mats, absorbing nutrients through its underbelly like a living Swiffer. No face, no limbs, no regrets. The wind whispers across the plain. There's no scent of decay, no feathers drifting from unseen birds, no fur snagged on branches. Nothing here leaves pieces behind. When these creatures die, they vanish completely, and the ground forgets quickly unless the conditions are perfect. Here's an odd fact: some researchers believe Dickinsonia might have used cholesterol. Not as a diet plan, there were no health blogs back then, but as a biological marker. If that's true, it means they were more animal than plant, which would be hilarious considering how aggressively not animal they look. You pause beside a wide, spiraling shape. Tribrachidium. It's symmetrical in 3 parts, not 2. You frown. That's not how nature usually rolls. Nature loves twos. 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 lungs, 2 chances to mess things up. But this thing, it was doing a waltz before biology learned to walk. Above you, clouds swirl in slow spirals. There's no storm, just atmospheric curiosity. The air is thicker here. The oxygen content low but climbing. Life's just beginning to tinker with photosynthesis on a scale that matters. You take a breath, and it's not bad. Just old. You look around. There's movement, but it's sluggish. Something glides just below the mud. No eyes, no mouth, just direction. You wonder if it knows where it's going or if movement is just something it does, like blinking or dreaming. And then you find the shape. Unlike the others, this one doesn't lie flat. It rises slightly, a rounded dome with a raised center and 3 lobes. It almost looks like it's breathing. You lean in and see no detail, no face, no claws. But there's a strange pull to it, like it remembers something you don't. This one was probably an experiment. Earth trying out a shape, a body plan, maybe a trick or two. Did it work? Who knows? It didn't last. Nothing here did, but that's the thing: failure in this age wasn't the end. It was just rehearsal. The Ediacaran life forms might have ruled Earth for millions of years, and we barely know them. They came quietly, never shouted, never roared. And then sometime before the Cambrian explosion, they disappeared. Not with a bang, not with ice, not even with a predator. They just faded. And here's the real kicker. We're not sure why. Some think they couldn't handle the rise of more complex animals. Others blame the changing chemistry of the ocean. A few argue they were simply outcompeted by creatures with mouth guts and more ambition. But maybe, just maybe, they never meant to stay. The earth shifts beneath your feet again. A tremble. The kind of tectonic murmur that reminds you this planet is always stretching, twisting, sighing. You turn and catch one last glimpse of that strange tri-lobed shape. It seems to watch you without watching. A life form that lived before memory, before bones, before anything wanted to chase or flee. And just like that, you're alone again. No footprints to follow. No eyes staring from the undergrowth. Just vague trails in the sediment leading nowhere in particular. You're standing on the shoulders of the forgotten. Before the first tooth. Before the first snowflake. Before history noticed. You walk toward the coastline where the earth sighs into sea. The edge is soft, grainy with ancient sand, and the water laps in gentle pulses like a planet learning to breathe. But there's no crashing, no roar. This isn't the kind of ocean you know. It's quiet, almost shy. You're about to step into a world where hunger hasn't sharpened its teeth yet. Welcome to the oceans with no hunger. You wade ankle-deep into warm, shallow water, so clear it looks unreal. Everything moves slowly here, drifting rather than swimming, hovering instead of darting. This isn't a sea filled with pursuit. It's a place of slow motion of patience. Nothing wants to eat anything else because eating as an act of aggression hasn't evolved yet. Below the surface, life drapes across the seafloor like decorative thought. There are mats of cyanobacteria puffing out oxygen in tiny, unhurried bubbles. Strings of jelly-like organisms pulse with a faint glow as if lit from inside by mood lighting. A soft-bodied thing floats past your leg. It's gelatinous, segmented, and clearly alive, but it has no eyes, no mouth. It's not interested in you, not because you're scary, but because curiosity hasn't been coded into its system. You pause. The silence is unsettling. Not even a ripple breaks the surface with intention. This is the Ediacaran seascape pre-predator, pre-panic. A time when life grew without the pressure of being devoured. Historians still debate whether some of these ancient marine creatures even moved. Many appear to have simply attached themselves to the seafloor and stayed there. Not because they were lazy, but because nothing made them go. No fear, no reason. You kneel down and notice a disc-shaped creature, a small, pale, Medusa-like ripple half buried in the sand. It's Hautia, possibly one of the earliest animals with muscle tissue. If that's true, it may have been among the first to move with purpose, but even then that purpose was likely meandering, drifting, maybe mild nudging. And here's an odd fact for you, Jawed. Fish didn't appear until around 440 million years ago. You're still tens of millions of years away from anything capable of a proper bite. No sharks, no teeth, just mouths that suction or ooze. You keep walking. The sand beneath your feet occasionally writhes with life just below the surface. Worms, maybe, or something pretending to be a worm. They leave delicate trails, spirals, zigzags, and the occasional accidental smiley face. Further out, the water deepens. You swim slowly, letting the strange warmth surround you. The ocean doesn't sting. No salt in your eyes, no cold shock on your skin. You float effortlessly, and below you, life fans out in soft pastels. Feathered forms known as rangeomorphs, like underwater ferns made of fractals, stand tall on the seabed. They don't have mouths, or stomachs, or bones. They just exist absorbing nutrients directly through their skin like a philosophical sponge. The rangeomorphs are hypnotic. You drift closer to one and catch a faint movement, just the suggestion of swaying though there's no current. You think maybe it knows you're watching. Or maybe you've just been staring too long. Nothing chases anything here. Nothing hides. The idea of prey simply hasn't formed yet. You imagine how different your world would be without that basic predator-prey tension. No panicked squirrels, no lion documentaries. No shark movies, no chasing your little brother with a plastic dinosaur. It's almost too peaceful. You think about how life changed the moment one creature figured out how to puncture another. How jaws turned peaceful mats of life into dinner plates. But right now, there are no such intentions. Not in this sea. Not yet. You pass by a structure that looks like a jellyfish, frozen in place. It's Aspidella, a fossil that scientists originally mistook for algae, then fungi, then something else entirely. Its exact nature still debated. But one thing's clear, it didn't go anywhere fast. You kick gently and push back toward shore. Your shadow moves slowly beneath you. You notice something strange about it. It doesn't resemble just you, it's blurry, multiple stretched. Like something else was here once. Something that didn't leave behind bones or teeth, just influence. Ghosts in the genome. You emerge from the water. Not a single fish jumped. Not a single fin darted past. This was the ocean before thrill, before kill. Just layers of soft life resting patiently in the stillness. You sit at the edge and let the sun dry your skin. The warmth feels clean, no ozone. Yet remember, so you're getting a full spectrum sunbath. Not recommended, by the way. SPF Infinity wouldn't help you here. You glance back one last time at the ocean. It glimmers softly. You get the feeling it's waiting, because something is coming. The Cambrian won't stay quiet forever. Soon, something's going to chomp. And once that happens, no one floats without fear again. You wake to the sound of wings. Not birds, not bats, not anything you'd call normal. The fluttering is thick and dry like paper folding in a breeze. You blink against the golden haze of morning, and the air above you is alive with wings that shouldn't exist. Welcome to the age of velvet skies. You sit up slowly, brushing off a thin layer of spore dust that settled on your chest. Around you rise towering stalks of club moss and fern. Still no flowers, still no fruit. The forest is ancient and upright, and the air hums with something alien. The trees breathe oxygen and too much of it, enough to change everything. Above your head, a dragonfly the size of a hawk cruises through the shafts of sunlight, wings glinting like stained glass. It banks hard left pivots midair with the grace of a dancer and vanishes between the trunks. You barely hear a thing. These wings aren't for flapping. They're for slicing air like origami knives. You're in the Carboniferous again, but further in. The planet is breathing deep. Oxygen levels have spiked to over 30%, nearly 50% higher than what you're used to. Fires rage more easily. Bugs grow too big. And anything with gills or spiracles is having a very good time. Historians still debate whether high oxygen levels cause gigantism in insects or merely allowed it. Some argue that insects ballooned in size because they could. Others say competition and environment nudge them toward the sky. Either way, what you're looking at are the overachievers of an oxygen-rich world. Meganeura buzzes above you again, wingspan nearly 3 feet. If insects had sports cars, this would be one. Sleek, silent, beautifully unnecessary. You can actually hear its wing beats when it slows down. They whisper like fan blades set to threatening. Odd fact. Meganeura likely didn't flap its wings like today's dragonflies. Its muscles worked more like levers than motors. Insect biomechanics hadn't finished inventing agility yet, but honestly, they didn't need to. Who needs turns when you're the biggest thing airborne? You wander deeper into the forest. Light filters down in dusty green beams. The air feels heavier, but in a pleasant, dreamy way. You take a breath and feel it flood your lungs like forest wine. It's easy to forget how flammable this place is. A lightning strike could ignite the entire landscape, but for now it's calm. Something scuttles up a nearby tree trunk. A centipede, no, not that. Bigger, thicker, arching and flexing as it climbs. Arthropleura. Nearly 8 feet long. You freeze, but it doesn't care about you. It's too busy chasing sunlight or maybe nothing at all, the largest invertebrate to ever crawl the earth. Imagine a baguette with legs moving like a caterpillar possessed. It disappears into the foliage, and you exhale. Remember that nothing here has fur, no mammals yet. Warm-bloodedness still belongs to the distant future. These skies belong to the insects, and they know it. You hear a rustle above. Something drops softly onto your shoulder. You flinch. It's a beetle. Glossy black, nearly the size of your palm. You tilt your head trying to meet its eyes, but it has none you can see. It flexes its legs, decides you're not edible, and takes off with a dry, deliberate hum. You shake your head, trying not to laugh. Nope, you say aloud. Absolutely not. The trees don't answer. You find a clearing, and there it is, the forest canopy opening up into a shaft of warm light filled with floating spores. You step into it, and the insects swarm. Not at you, just through you. Lacewings. Giant silverfish, something with 4 sets of wings and no name. It feels like stepping into a slow-motion snow globe filled with soft chitin and prehistoric glitter. For a moment, you're weightless in this high-oxygen heaven. Every breath feels like a promise. Every flutter overhead a lullaby. But then you spot something on the ground. It's a body, a dragonfly dead, wings torn, one eye caved in. Not fossilized, fresh. You kneel. There's no blood. Insects don't bleed like mammals. Just a crack in the armor. You tilt your head. Something did this, something bigger. Not wind, not time. A ripple passes through the undergrowth. Your breath catches. You remember where there's prey, there must be pressure. You're not alone here. The age of velvet skies wasn't just pretty. It was practice. Up ahead, a shape shifts between trunks. Something lizard-like, or maybe not. Reptiles are just beginning to arrive. The first vertebrates to leave the water entirely. They're still figuring things out, like limbs and menus. You take a cautious step back, but the thing's already gone. Whatever it was fast. Not cheetah fast, but fast enough to make the bugs nervous. The oxygen has made things bold. Big wings, big bugs, and now big risks. Even in paradise, evolution whispers try teeth. You look up one last time at the dragonflies tracing lazy figure eights through the canopy. Their wings catch the light and like opals. But you know better now. There's a deadline hidden in those spirals. This golden air won't last. Soon, the skies will belong to things with spines and jaws. You find yourself walking across a landscape so still, you begin to wonder if time has paused. Nothing runs, nothing chases, no dust is kicked up by desperate feet. You listen closely. No shrieks, no screeches, no footfalls echoing off rock. It's not just quiet. It's calm in a way that feels suspicious. You're in a world before the first predator's shadow. Here life doesn't yet know fear. The trees you pass are more like tall mosses towering, and delicate as if grown from wet paper. The undergrowth is soft and sparse. Everything is green-brown and very, very slow. The insects still rule the air, their oversized wings slicing lazily through high-oxygen silence. Beneath your boots, the dirt is thick and rich, so much dead plant matter compacted untouched. No scavengers, no decomposers with sharp tools. This world is full of life, but it hasn't yet invented urgency. You pause near a shallow pool watching. In the water, translucent creatures drift like forgotten ideas. Worms, flat-bodied things, tiny finned slugs. None of them are hunting. They just exist, grazing, floating, bumping into each other politely. You could swim here and no one would care. There's no danger. But the first itch has started. Somewhere beneath the mud, in the genes of something blind and hungry, evolution is plotting. Historians still debate whether the earliest predators came from the ocean's middle depths or from the muddy shallows. Did one creature accidentally develop a gripping structure, something to hold to take? Or was it a change in chemistry, a spike in muscle development that triggered the urge to chase? You stroll further past a cluster of early ferns. Something brushes against your leg. You look down. A small trilobite bumps your boot scuttles a few inches to the left and keeps moving. You're not prey. Nothing here is prey, because no one here is playing that game yet. It's eerie, really. You realize you've gone this entire walk without flinching, without looking over your shoulder. Because even the concept of predator hasn't been downloaded yet. Odd fact time. The earliest jaws may have evolved from modified gill arches structures originally used to support breathing. Nature just thought, hey, what if this grabbed stuff instead? And so the slippery slope began. You climb a gentle ridge and stop to catch your breath. Below you stretches a plain of low-growing swamp peppered with tall, spore-releasing stalks and thin trickling streams. Dragonflies skim across the water unbothered. A few amphibians, lumpy and uncertain, climb onto the bank and flop about like spilled pudding. They don't run. There's nothing to run from. You start to think about what it takes to invent fear. First, something has to want, not just to live, but to live better, to take more. And then something else has to lose. It's a brutal upgrade. You find a fossil embedded in stone, a fish. Jawless, flat, covered in armor. It looks more like a shoe insert than a threat. Ostracoderms, they're called some of the earliest vertebrates. They didn't hunt, they filtered, grazed, lived long, slow lives. Some probably died of boredom. Then just a few million years later, jawed fish appear. Suddenly, things start to change. Sizes shrink then spike. Mobility increases. Eyes sharpen. Limbs grow stronger. That ripple of unease. That's the world preparing for its first chase scene. You squint across the low marshland and see it something new. A small muscular form darts between stalks. It's barely bigger than a pencil case, but it moves differently. Not just a drift, a dart, a decision. That's not grazing, that's tracking. It disappears and you're left with your own heartbeat. Not long now, you think. Not long before, one thing bites another and everything else learns to run. You sit by a stream and trail your hand in the water. The surface is calm, but beneath it, every creature is improvising. New joints, new pressures, little mutations. Somewhere a mouth is widening. You wonder what it was like those first few times. The first real ambush. The first shriek that pierced the water and made other fish scatter. The first creature that realized it wasn't safe anymore. You remember your last walk through the Adiakran fields, how nothing watched you. How the ocean didn't care. How the air was thick with indifference. Here you swear you feel something watching now. Maybe not out of hunger, but curiosity. A creature crouched on the threshold of aggression, still working out the physics of pursuit. A predator being built in real time. The forest grows quieter as dusk settles. Shadows stretch. The stillness you've enjoyed suddenly turns brittle, fragile, like a glass of water that's one vibration away from shattering. You hear a splash. Nothing dramatic, just a splash, then silence. You don't move. Something has moved with intention. The first intention. The first shadow. You stand up slowly, brushing off your hands. The age of the chase is coming. And when it does, even dragonflies will learn to twitch. You walk now across a land that barely knows its name. The sky overhead is low, strange, pinkish gray. It's not sunset. It's the atmosphere trying out color palettes. And beneath your feet, the earth thrums like a living drumhead. Something big is stirring below. Welcome to the warped sunlight of supercontinents. Everything around you is part of a single mass. One giant sprawling jigsaw puzzle of continents pressed together in a shape that doesn't care about aesthetics. This is Pannotia, or maybe it's just barely transitioned into Gondwana depending on your place in the clock. Earth doesn't keep neat records. You stand on what will one day be bits of Africa, South America, and Antarctica, all fused in a continental cuddle. You hike across a plain where steam rises from vents in the ground. It smells faintly metallic like a hardware store after a rainstorm. The terrain is cracked, blistered, volcanic. Here, land isn't land, it's a phase. The plates below shift constantly, trying to decide who sits where. This place is loud, not from animals, but from the planet itself. Every so often, a distant rumble rolls beneath your feet like indigestion. You feel it before you hear it. A long, slow vibration. You pause, wait. Then it passes. The land groans and rearranges its internal furniture. Historians still debate exactly when Pannotia broke apart, and whether it was ever truly a full supercontinent or just a particularly clingy arrangement of plates. Either way, you're here during the slow-motion breakup of something massive. It's not fast. Think more continental awkward silence than explosive divorce. You climb a rise of dark stone warm to the touch. Lava cooled just a few centuries ago. Around you, volcanic cones puff lazy columns of gas. One erupts gently in the distance, not violently, more like a burp. The plume rises into the already hazy sky, and for a moment the sun dims. Odd fact, before continents as we know them existed, much of Earth's surface was water. The earliest landmasses were lonely islands. Supercontinents like Rodinia Pannotia and later Pangea were rare experiments in real estate. Each one formed, stretched, crumbled, and was recycled into the next. The air is thick with CO2. You're sweating, but that's the norm here. The greenhouse effect is in full swing and the climate has no chill. No glaciers, no poles capped in ice, just warm seas and steaming land. Everything smells like damp basalt and overconfidence. You come across a crack in the earth wide enough to look into. Down below, a river of lava glows faintly orange. It pulses like a living thing. You squat at the edge and feel the heat rise like a warning. This isn't danger in the dramatic sense. It's more like being slowly simmered. You're part of the boil. Suddenly a tremor. Not much, just a shift. A subtle adjustment. A reminder that this supercontinent isn't stationary. Pannosia is beginning to fragment. Slabs of crust grind past each other silently, awkwardly. The planet is learning to shuffle. You pass a formation of twisted rock layers stacked like lasagna after an earthquake. Each stratum tells a story, seas that rose and vanished, forests that bloomed and burned, continents that drifted and collided like indecisive icebergs. You stop to rest beside a fissure and notice something growing near your feet. It's not a tree, not even a bush. It's a mat of early moss clinging stubbornly to the edge of a rock. Life always finds a ledge. Above the clouds darken, not with rain, but with ash. Somewhere a distant volcano is grumbling louder. You tilt your head and listen. The sound isn't constant, it pulses, like breathing or warning. It's hard to tell which. You move on, walking along a ridge where the earth drops sharply into a basin. The floor of it is a cracked salt flat glinting like fish scales. Once it was a shallow sea, now it's just memory. And that's the thing. Everything you see here is transition. There are no forever states. The land changes its mind constantly. Mountains rise, then erode. Oceans invade, then retreat. Forests burn, regrow, die again. You notice the light dimming. The sun's still there, but its rays hit at odd angles, now filtered through the haze of constant volcanic debris. That's what gives the sky its warped tone, like reality tinted through smoke. For a moment, you think about how this world must feel to the creatures living in it, if anything here feels at all. The amphibians that slop from pool to pool, the insects gliding beneath a ceiling of steam, everything is adapting not just to life, but to a planet that won't sit still. And then you hear it. A deep echoing crack. You freeze. It's not thunder. It's not a falling tree. It's the crust splitting. Somewhere underfoot, a new rift is opening. Not fast, not dangerous. Just the earth again reminding you that nothing stays. That what's joined will come apart. That one day this single landmass will scatter across the globe and everything that once shared roots will forget each other's names. You exhale hot breath into hot air. You step away from the crack, because even here, even now, before mammoths, before humans, before memory, this world knows how to let go. You descend from the cracked ridges of the supercontinent into something softer, darker, wetter. The sky hasn't cleared, but the light changes anyway. It filters down in soft emeralds and pale gold caught in columns of steam rising from the earth. The ground is pulpy underfoot, breathing. Not literally, but almost. You've entered the age when plants made the wind green. This is no ordinary forest. For one, it's barely a forest at all. More like an uprising of stalks, tubes, and towers. Giant fungi jut out like parasols, their caps broad and leathery. Tree-sized club mosses lean against each other like gossiping introverts. Ferns taller than giraffes sway without leaves, their fronds still experimenting with geometry. And everywhere is growth. It feels like being inside a terrarium set to chaotic lush. You step carefully through underbrush, made not of branches, but of curling primitive tendrils. The air smells sharp, spicy, almost thanks to the cocktail of chemicals these early plants release. No flowers yet, of course, nothing sweet, no color riot, but something about it is overwhelming. Like the entire forest is exhaling into your lungs. And maybe it is. Because during this time, roughly 350 to 300 million years ago, plants rewrote the planet. Literally, they learned how to grow tall, how to lay down thick bark, how to draw carbon from the atmosphere and lock it into themselves. The forest grew tall, dense, and everywhere. And in doing so, they changed the sky. Oxygen levels skyrocketed. Carbon dioxide plummeted. Entire ecosystems bloomed around the tree's generosity. The wind, once dry and metallic, turned green, filled with spores, oxygen, and the scent of respiration. You run your hand along a nearby trunk. It isn't rough like modern bark. It's strangely smooth like papier-mâché layered over muscle. This is Archaeopteris, a tree-like plant that's not quite a fern and not quite anything else. Somewhere in its spiral of possibilities, trees, as you know them, begin. Above you, light filters through giant leafless crowns. Everything is still. Even the insects move cautiously, those oversized dragonflies, the massive roaches, the gliding myriapods. They flap without fear, but with a kind of reverence. After all, they're breathing the most oxygen-rich air in Earth's history. It's like being in a planet-sized lung. Odd fact time, these forests grew so fast and so big that they started to cool the Earth. All that carbon they sucked up. It got buried, trapped in the trunks, and then sealed in when the plants died and didn't rot properly. That's the origin of most of today's coal. A backlog of photosynthesis. You pass a clearing and the air gets heavy. Not hot heavy. Like every breath is syrupy. That's the effect of the oxygen combined with the sheer density of spores and vapor. It's almost too much. You cough lightly and keep walking. Historians still debate whether this forest expansion triggered mass extinctions in the oceans. As plants changed the air, and land nutrients flushed into seas, killing off some marine life. A reminder that even when plants win, someone else might lose. A stalk shifts beside you. A tree falls in the distance with a creaking groan, like someone changing their mind too late. No animal caused it. The tree simply got tired. Too tall, too hollow, too brave. The crash kicks up a storm of spores that shimmer in the slanting light like glitter made of fog. You stand still and watch it drift, and suddenly you feel tiny. This world doesn't need predators to intimidate you. It doesn't need roars or claws, just the sheer pressure of life. Growth happening faster than you can blink. Entire groves rising, falling, composting, and rising again. You're not the center of anything, just a polite guest in the middle of a planet-sized photosynthesis party. You pause to rest on a root the size of a subway rail. As you sit, something small and moss-colored skitters past your boot. Some kind of early amphibian, probably. Limbs awkward, gait uncertain. It glances at you with a bulbous, unblinking eye. It doesn't run. Nothing here runs. Because in this world, running hasn't become urgent yet. It's not a jungle, not a battlefield. It's a factory. A slow-motion miracle factory powered by sunlight and swamp. You look up. The canopy sways, not with wind, but with breath. There's no other word for it. The whole place inhales and exhales, and for a moment you exhale too. You are a speck in a green engine. You are walking through the lungs of Earth. And as you step away from your resting spot and press forward, the forest opens briefly, just enough for a gust of wind to rush through. You close your eyes as it hits you, cool and dense, and filled with the scent of a world learning to grow. A living breeze thick with spores and possibility. You whisper to yourself without meaning to. The wind is green, and it is. You follow the green wind until it fades and something stranger takes its place. A stillness not of calm but of tension. It starts with a shadow, a flicker in the corner of your eye. Then another, not movement, just the suggestion of being watched. You've arrived at the echo of forgotten eyes. This is a land that remembers vision before it understood violence. A time when eyes were new, and light was something more than warmth, it was strategy, awareness, power. You step carefully across uneven ground where early burrows interrupt the mossy sprawl. Small openings all leading downward. They look recent, but they're older than mammals. They belong to creatures long extinct. Not dinosaurs, not reptiles. Something far weirder, half amphibian, half idea. The air shifts again, drier. The forest thins into patchy wetland and low scrub. Pools of stagnant water reflect the overcast sky. You catch glimpses of movement beneath the surface, little flickers. Things with soft bodies, awkward limbs, and more importantly, eyes. Historians still debate when vision truly began to drive evolution. Some argue it was during the Cambrian explosion when predators used eyesight to stalk. Others point to deep time, when simple light-sensitive spots helped early animals know up from down. But here in this strange twilight of the Carboniferous eyes have become more than tools. They've become language. You crouch beside a shallow pool, a creature floats just under the surface watching you. It's no larger than your palm, flattened, finned, its body translucent, its head slightly raised. Two eyes, dark, unblinking, stare at you from either side. It doesn't move, doesn't flinch. You stare back. It's not fear, it's calculation. You're being studied. Then it flicks its tail and vanishes into silt. And that's when you realize in a world where few things kill eyes are still useful. For recognizing food, for navigation, for mates. But here's the thing, just because no one's chasing yet doesn't mean no one's watching. You wander past a half-collapsed tree, its surface crawling with centipede-like creatures. Most are eyeless. They live in the dark under bark and stone where vision is wasted. But others, especially those that dart between light and shadow, have crude, bulbous eyes. Single lenses, light catchers. Not beauty, not clarity, just signal and response. Odd fact time, horseshoe crabs have more than 10 eyes. Some on their tail, some under their shell. They've barely changed in hundreds of millions of years, and yet they've always been watching. Even in pitch black, even through extinction events. They never forgot how to look. You step into an area of dense, reed-like plants. Light slants in at an angle, shimmering off water trapped between roots. Here, the insects grow stranger. Some have compound eyes that wrap around their heads like mirrored helmets. Others just have glints barely perceptible, like shiny pinheads. But all of them are looking. You feel it again. That sensation, that you are not alone. But the funny part, nothing here could take you down. Not really. You're a ghost in this time. No smell, no sound, but still there's that gaze. It's ancient, directionless, less I see you, and more I record your existence. Because these early eyes aren't selective. They don't judge. They just collect light. They remember light. You find a rock pool. Something moves within. It's not swimming, it's scanning. A creature no longer than your finger with a head like a shovel. And two eyes set far apart, slowly tracks the sky. Not hunting, not feeding, just processing. And then it blinks. A blink here is a miracle. Eyelids haven't caught on yet, not universally. Some creatures still let their eyes dry out. Some never close them. But this one has blinked. Historians still argue whether blinking evolved to protect eyes or to reset focus. Either way, you feel like something monumental just happened. The blink was not for you, but it included you. You stand and feel 100 tiny gazes track your motion. You start to leave. Back toward the thicker woods. But the light has changed again. The sun, such as it is dipping behind the cloud curtain, and the forest now glows in pale purples and dying gold. You feel exposed. As if the whole world is watching you walk away, not out of threat, out of memory. As if somewhere deep in the soil or woven into the spore-thick air, your silhouette has been recorded. Not written down, not fossilized, but seen. You pass another pool and catch your own reflection. But it's wrong. There's a double image, like something else stood beside you for a moment. Something with two eyes and no name. You blink. It's gone. You step carefully into the shadow of the ferns and finally exhale. The feeling fades. And yet, you know that something somewhere is still blinking back. You push through dense ferns and reed grass that rise above your head, the light growing dimmer with each step. The terrain softens, then dips. Your foot sinks slightly, not into water, into something else. You stop. The ground beneath you is hollow. You take a cautious step back and glance down. There's a subtle depression in the mossy earth, a perfect circle of collapse. Beside it, another and another. The pattern is unmistakable. A tunnel system, ancient and vast, carved long before mammals burrowed for warmth or foxes dug dens for their pups. These are tunnels without builders. You kneel beside the nearest hole, brushing aside wet fronds to get a better look. It's not freshly made. The edges have softened, overgrown with slow-drifting moss, but the depression is too consistent to be random. Something made this, and it wasn't weather. You reach in with one hand. It's cool. Dry. No animal rushes out, no insect hisses. Whatever lived here is long gone. The burrow curves downward and vanishes into shadow, precise and deliberate. Not a collapse, not erosion, a decision. You stand and scan the area. They're everywhere. A honeycomb hidden beneath the jungle floor. There's no scent, no bones, no tools, just absence. These are fossils of behavior, not body. Trace fossils, they're called. The evidence of activity without a skeleton to show for it. Burrows, footprints, coprolites if you want to get gross. Historians still debate who made many of these early tunnels arthropods. Primitive amphibians, giant worms. The truth is, we're guessing. We know something moved underground. We just can't prove who or why. You walk a few paces and nearly trip over a larger opening big enough to crawl into. It slopes gently, tempting. You lie flat and shine your eyes into the darkness. Nothing looks back, but your mind fills in the gaps. You imagine the motion, long, slow creatures inching through earth, silent and wet, 1,000 years before mammals even dreamed of fur. The thought lingers. What did these creatures need shelter from? Not predators, not yet. Maybe heat, maybe flooding, maybe each other. Odd fact, some of Earth's earliest burrowers may have been detritivores, trash eaters who survived by scraping through decaying matter. In other words, the first architects were garbage collectors. You sit on a dry patch of moss and let the sounds settle. It's not quiet. The forest hums above wings, flicking plants breathing distant tree trunks creaking like ancient doors. But underfoot, it's mute. The tunnels below hold their secrets tightly. The weight of the unknown presses on you. There's something eerie about finding only the void of a life. No fossilized skull, no trace of what it looked like. Just evidence of a decision: dig here, live here, pass it through this space and never return. A shadow flickers at the corner of your eye. You turn quickly, heart jumping, but it's only a dragonfly. Still, you swear it passed directly over one of the tunnel mouths. Maybe they remember. Maybe they feel the warmth beneath and something old in their genes whispers, avoid. You begin to notice more burrows as you walk. Some clustered in loose spirals. Some spaced apart like property lines. And they're not all the same size. Some are wide enough for your torso. Others barely big enough for your hand. A real estate market of the Carboniferous. You crouch beside a particularly deep one and toss a pebble in. It clinks against something hard, not rock, not bone. You freeze. Then nothing. Whatever it hit is too deep to reach or too patient to care. You feel suddenly self-conscious. like you've been walking across someone's ceiling. That's when the mist rolls in slow, silken, and unnaturally cold. It slinks across the ground, drawn low to the heat of ancient passageways. The mist pools around the tunnel, mouths like it's being pulled inside, like the earth is sipping fog. You step back, just in case. Somewhere far off, a tree groans and falls. The thud rattles your feet. Not from danger, just time. Everything here moves with the rhythm of centuries. You wonder what kind of creature would make a home beneath this world. One that could live in silence. One that could abandon its entire body to time and leave only the echo of movement. You whisper mostly to yourself, "What were you?" The moss doesn't answer, but the tunnel gapes quietly. And maybe in a few million years, someone will find your footprints too. Not your bones, not your name. Just a path you once took across a floor you didn't build, above a home that never asked to be found. You've left the burrows behind, but the silence clings to your skin like a thin film. You feel heavier now, not physically, but atmospherically, as if the air has lost something. And then it hits you warmth. Not the weather, no. The concept of warmth. It's gone. Or more accurately, it hasn't arrived yet. You've crossed into the world before warmth had a name. This is a time when the word warm-blooded would mean nothing. Because nothing has dared to try it. Every creature you encounter now, every scuttling limb or squirming spine, is governed by the outside world. They can't regulate their own heat. They wear the climate like a second skeleton. Cold means slow. Heat means hunger. The rhythm of life is tuned to the weather's whim. You step carefully over a damp log, its surface glistening with mold and centuries. A squat amphibian blinks up at you from a nearby puddle. Its body glistens like a used bar of soaptail, thick and motionless. You move slowly, and so does it, both of you affected by the coolness pressing in. It doesn't flee, it doesn't need to. Nothing here is built for speed, not in the cold. The forest feels less alive now. Not dead, just dormant. Everything seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the sun to return. It's as if life itself only rents this space and the landlord, the climate, dictates who gets to move and when. You pause near a cluster of early cicades. Their leaves curl slightly browning at the edges. Even the plants seem to respond to the air's sluggishness. The wind has dropped, the mist has thickened, and you find yourself exhaling longer than usual just to feel something warm move through your throat. Odd fact, cold-blooded animals aren't actually cold all the time. Many are excellent thermoregulators, using sunshade, burrowing, or water to fine-tune their temperatures. But in this ancient world, it's not strategy, it's submission. The ambient temperature is the law, and everyone obeys it. Historians still debate when warm-bloodedness first emerged. Some place it deep in the synapsid line, the early mammal-like reptiles that scuttled around after dark. Others push it further forward into the true mammals. Regardless, the idea was revolutionary: burn your food internally to maintain heat. It's costly, but it means freedom. You touch the bark of a nearby tree. It's wet and cold and smells like rotting lettuce. You imagine curling up against it and realize it would not help you. This is not a forest built for comfort. It's a thermodynamic playground. And you'd be a popsicle in an hour. You spot movement to your left. A long-bodied creature, legs splayed out to the sides, scurrying through wet leaves. It's not hunting, it's hiding. It's not fleeing from a predator. It's fleeing the temperature. A shift in wind. A drop in heat. A shadow cast by a passing cloud. You crouch, hold out your hand. The creature freezes, its body stiffening like cooling rubber. If you touched it, it would be damp, cool, and indifferent. You don't. You just watch it quiver, then slowly disappear under a log that's barely warmer than the air. You rise, legs cracking slightly. Even your body, modern and messy, doesn't like it here. Your blood rebels. Your breath hangs like thread. You're walking through a world that hasn't yet invented the metabolic privilege of staying warm after sunset. You reach a clearing, and there lying in the open is something unexpected. Bones, not many. Just a loose arrangement of ribs and vertebrae half buried in the loam. It's a synapsid, probably. An ancestor not of reptiles, but of you. You brush away some moss. The skull is narrow, no fangs, no drama. Just two large eye sockets and the faint ridge of an inner ear. It's not warm-blooded, not yet. But it's inching in that direction. It may have curled into a ball at night. It may have burrowed for warmth, its skin thickening its metabolism, sharpening. This one might have burned just a bit more energy than its neighbors, just enough to move when others stalled. You sit beside it and imagine the slow march toward warmth. A few creatures somewhere in this swamp learning how to cheat the cold, how to hold a tiny furnace inside their ribs, how to take a meal and turn it into motion even at midnight. Not the majority, not yet. The world still belongs to the cold-blooded, the amphibians, the sprawling-limbed, the sunlight slaves. But the shift has begun, and warmth will one day win. You exhale. The cloud of your breath is visible lingering briefly in the still air. Everything around you continues its ancient hush, its slow-motion crawl. But under that stillness is revolution. Not teeth, not speed, but warmth. The first private fire. The forest thins as you walk the wet ground, firming into something dry, cracked, and faintly sulphurous. It's quiet, but not the silence of peace. It's that empty echo you feel when something used to be here. The air tastes different now. Not rotten, not fresh, just still, and too still. You've entered the moment when the earth itself took a breath, and everything stopped. It starts with a feeling in your gut. Not fear, not confusion, just absence. The bugs are gone, the trees are thinner, smaller, less sure of themselves. The ground is littered with fallen fronds, decomposing in place. The sky above is veiled with high clouds thin as gauze, and the sun behind it is pale, drained. You've seen dying forests before, but this is different, because this one's not just dying. It's participating in something larger, something planetary. You're standing in the shadow of an extinction event, and not one of the famous ones, not the asteroid, not the dinosaurs. No, this is the late Devonian extinction, a quiet apocalypse, one that moved in waves across millions of years, snuffing out life like a patient eraser. Historians still debate what caused it. Some say the spread of land plants did it, drawing carbon dioxide from the air, flooding nutrients into the oceans, triggering massive algae blooms that choked marine life. Others blame volcanic activity, sea level changes, or even climate shifts, too slow for life to outrun. You pause beside a cracked tree trunk split open like a rib. Inside rot. Not the usual kind. It's dry, papery, like something left in the sun too long. Nothing has come to feed on it. Not even the fungi. They're gone too. You keep walking. The ground is drier now but fissured, as if the land has exhaled once and hasn't yet inhaled again. A wide basin stretches before you. Empty. You climb a low rise to get a better view. It used to be a swamp. You can tell by the bones. Scattered. Fragmented. Fish mostly. Lungfish. Placoderms. A few early tetrapods. They're not arranged. Not picked clean. Just left. As though the water vanished and forgot to take them with it. Odd fact, time placoderms, those armored fish that once ruled the seas, were wiped out in this event. For millions of years, they were the apex predators, and then slowly they vanished. Not in a single disaster, but wave after wave of decline. A slow-motion dethroning. You crouch beside one skull. The armor is cracked, the jaw open. You can still see the faint impressions of where muscle once connected. This fish had a face, a plan, probably a territory. Now, just a hollow outline in dusty stone. You exhale and realize you've stopped hearing birdsong, insects, even wind. The whole world is on pause. You know what's worse than a catastrophe? A long, boring one. A crisis that doesn't look like a crisis until it's too late. Like a tide that doesn't crash, it just keeps rising. That's what this extinction was. A creeping decline. Biodiversity fell, reefs collapsed, evolutionary avenues closed like shops on a failing street. You see it in the plants, too. They're thinner, struggling. Where once the carboniferous forests boomed like green fireworks, now there's hesitation in every leaf. The once mighty club mosses lean like old men. Ferns curl inward. The air is dry not just in moisture but in intention. You pass a stream, or what's left of one. A thin trickle runs between rocks once carved by more enthusiastic water. Algae cling to the edges but only barely. Even the microbes seem unsure whether to stay. You dip your fingers into the flow. It's warm. Not comforting warm, stagnant warm. The earth has paused its song, and yet below the surface something waits. You can feel it. Life doesn't stop. It just changes lanes. You catch sight of a small four-limbed creature dragging itself toward a pool. Not graceful, not proud, but moving. A distant cousin of the first true land vertebrates amphibians who brave the dry only because the wet was disappearing. Its eyes lock onto yours. It doesn't blink. It just breathes. It's a survivor. Barely. You sit beside it, and for a moment you share the quiet. Historians argue whether this extinction really was one event or many. Was it a single catastrophe or 1,000 little straws on 1,000 evolutionary backs? You don't know. But you do know this. Whatever happened here, it left fingerprints on everything that followed. Life changed course. Predators evolved jaws that weren't just for grabbing, but for obliterating. Plants learned to seed deeper. Animals grew lungs that didn't just sip air, but clung to it like treasure. The pause wasn't the end. It was a breath. And the next inhale would change everything. You follow the echo of that long silence. Your footsteps now landing on packed, dry earth that crumbles into dust with each step. The forest is behind you. The fog has lifted. In front of you lies an open, windswept plain. And across it, something strange. A path. Or what's left of one. Not made by feet, not by wheels, but by water long gone. You've arrived at the bed of an ancient current, the river that flowed backwards. The ground undulates in wide, subtle curves. Shallow ridges cut across the landscape in graceful, lazy arcs. You can see where the river once ran, its banks now cracked like old clay. But here's the weird part. The channels are braided in a pattern that makes no sense unless you flip your brain sideways. Because this river didn't flow toward the ocean. It flowed inward, toward the supercontinent's dry belly, against gravity, against reason. Historians still debate how common this was. Some suggest these retrograde rivers happened often on supercontinents like Pangaea, where massive inland basins sucked in water instead of letting it escape to the sea. Others believe these were rare flukes, moments where the planet's plumbing ran backward. But here you can feel it. A sense of geological rebellion. You kneel beside one of the ancient banks. The sediment is finely layered, each one a memory of a season long dead. Silt, clay, fine sand. A ripple of history laid down by water that couldn't decide which way was home. You trace your fingers along one layer, brittle and cool. You imagine the current slow broad, maybe choked with dead fish during the extinction, maybe teeming with early amphibians before that. And above it all, air that thickened with every mile inland, no ocean breeze to stir it. Odd fact. The Amazon River still shows signs of having once flowed west toward the Pacific before the Andes rose and shoved it into reverse. Sometimes rivers aren't just geological features, they're survivors of tectonic arguments. You rise and walk the path of the water. It feels wrong. Not just directionally, but spiritually. Rivers are meant to go. They pull you forward, give you a sense of destiny. This one recoils. You walk upriver toward nothing, toward dryness, toward the forgotten center of a forgotten world. You pass dry oxbows, once loops of water, now cradling wind-blown debris. A cracked log, the fragmented rib of something massive and fishy. You look at it and wonder what got stranded here. A creature that didn't know the water would leave. A creature that thought the current would always return. It didn't. Up ahead, the river's path narrows. The banks sharpen. You begin to see signs of stone, flat, broad plates embedded in the soil. These aren't natural. They're ripple marks fossilized. The ghost of flowing water frozen in the pose of motion. The texture underfoot becomes wavy, like the planet exhaling through sandstone. You pause, look back. From here, the landscape resembles a dried vein system. The river split, forked, collapsed in on itself. Each channel ending not in a delta or a cliff or a waterfall, but in silence. You cross into one of the broader old beds and notice something strange. Tracks. They're faint. So faint, but they're there. Not human, of course. Not anything you know. Just small four-toed impressions, clawed, dragging tail marks. Some amphibian or one of the early reptiles. Whatever it was, it moved against the old current, following the river backward. You wonder if it was lost, or if it knew what it was doing. You follow the tracks for a while, tracing the gentle sway of its journey. Then they stop, at a fossilized burrow mouth, just like the ones from earlier, but this one is exposed, laid open by erosion, a final resting place. You crouch, imagining the little thing crawling in to die as the river dried up. Or maybe it just slept and never woke. The wind picks up, dry, flat, lonely. It races across the plains, stirring dust but nothing more. The only water here now is fossilized in stone. In memory, you look up and see dark clouds forming far away, but they bring no storm, just shadow. A cooling curtain drifting across the high sky, too late for the creatures that once bathed here. You whisper aloud, "Where did you go?" And the wind answers not with sound, but with subtraction. Because that's what this place is now. A subtraction zone. Not the battlefield of an extinction, not the bonescape of some epic die-off. Just a place where things slowly disappeared. Where the water turned inward, then downward, and then away. You continue your walk, no longer following the river, but following where the memory of flow once imagined it might go. You climb out of the dry riverbed, your hands coated in ancient dust, your feet sore from walking on landscapes built by memory. The sky above has darkened again, not with storm clouds, but with time. The kind of dimming that has nothing to do with weather. You've followed the long breath of extinction and the backward current of a vanished world. Now you've arrived at the hinge of everything. You've arrived just before the first tooth shattered. The air is different here, thicker, meaner. It vibrates with tension as if the planet is holding its breath before a scream. You're standing at the edge of a newly born ecosystem, one sharpened by hunger. And right in front of you, moving low through the brush, is the thing that changed everything. It's not large, no horns, no feathers, no glory. Just a lizard-shaped body with oddly long legs and a mouth that juts out further than it needs to. And inside that mouth, a new kind of tooth. This is one of the first true predators to ever walk the land. It doesn't just clamp, it slices. You kneel. You don't want to, but you do. Watching it stalk through the undergrowth is like watching the first sentence ever written. There's purpose in every step, not instinct, not random hunger, strategy. It twitches once, then stills, head low, limbs tensed. And suddenly, it lunges. It doesn't matter what it was chasing, a bug maybe, a smaller lizard-like thing. You don't see it anymore, but you hear the crunch, a real decisive bite, the kind that sends a ripple through evolutionary time. Historians still debate what species first evolved the serrated tooth. Some point to early theropods. Others push the origin back to the synapsids, the strange proto-mammals with lumpy bodies and sharp ambitions. But here's what matters: at some point an animal didn't just grab its prey. It ripped it apart. Odd fact, time-serrated teeth. The kind with little backward-facing notches work like steak knives. They're biomechanically brilliant. They concentrate pressure, minimize energy use, and leave wounds that bleed more. Evolution doesn't always go for beauty, but it knows how to design cruelty. You follow the little predator at a distance. It disappears behind a stand of scorched-looking ferns, and you notice something more unsettling. There are others. Smaller ones, larger ones, some with longer legs, others with snouts that curve inward. It's not just one predator. It's a community of sharp mouths. An arms race that started with a single tooth and spiraled into evolutionary overdrive. You walk past a kill site, bones stripped clean, not scattered, not chewed, just processed. Something efficient did this, something that had practice. You shiver, and you're not alone, because now everything else runs. You see it in the quick jerks of the reptiles that once sunned lazily on rocks, in the twitchy insects that rise before you step, in the blur of a four-legged shape as it darts into a log heart pounding. The age of running has begun. You feel it in your own legs, the desire to move. Because that shattering tooth didn't just alter predator anatomy, it rewrote prey behavior. It forced everything else to respond. Harder shells, faster legs, hiding, mimicry, venom, spikes. Eyes moved to the sides of heads. Ears got better. Fear got smarter. All because one creature bit just a little too well. You crouch beneath a squat tree watching another predator pass. This one's larger, about the size of a medium dog, with a long, narrow head and gait like a stalking cat. It doesn't roar. That comes much later. But its silence is worse. It pauses, sniffs, then moves on. Your heartbeat slows, but your mind won't. You realize now what kind of world this is. It's no longer about surviving with the world. It's about surviving in spite of it. The stakes have changed. Warm-bloodedness may still be a whisper. Flowers and feathers and fur are future tricks. But here and now in this tooth-filled crucible, the rules are being redefined. Not by size, not by speed, but by the simple fact that something can now take life away from something else violently, repeatedly, and efficiently. And the earth doesn't blink. It rewards it. You rise slowly. The wind carries the scent of something you can't quite name, heat, iron breath. The smell of a world no longer balanced. A young predator leaps across your path, a twitch of tail and grin of teeth. It doesn't see you. But one day, something like it will. You don't walk anymore, you linger. The trees here have grown sparse and crooked, as if twisted in the effort to stay alive. The soil beneath your feet is packed but fragile, like the crust of a forgotten loaf. Everything looks like it's been through something, or many somethings. You've arrived at the quiet end of a world. You've reached the long vanishing. This isn't an apocalypse. This is after. The skies are pale again. The kind of colorless stretch that doesn't know if it's morning or evening. The sun's light filters in weakly, diffused by airborne ash maybe, or dust, or memory. You're walking across the remains of a world so thoroughly erased it forgot to leave a monument. The creatures that scuttled and climbed here, the forests that once brushed the clouds, gone. Not just extinct, unremembered. This is what happens when extinction isn't a bang or a blaze, but a slow, patient erasure that rewrites even the idea that life once stood here. You step into a shallow depression. It might have been a pond, might have been a feeding ground. Now it's just a basin of cracked sediment with no name. You kneel, touch the ground. It's warm, not from the sun, but from within. The earth is still alive. It's just tired. You find a fossilized stump, no taller than your knee. The growth rings tell you it lived fast and died faster. One dry season, maybe two. A miscalculation by the roots. It stands alone not because it was special, but because no one else lasted long enough to fall with it. Odd fact. Many extinction events don't leave behind a lot of drama. In the fossil record, they look like blank pages. No splatter, no bite marks, No dramatic skulls locked in combat, just a gap. You run your hand along the barkless wood. It's so smooth you think it might disappear if you touch it too hard. There's a kind of sacred stillness here. The land isn't rebuilding, not yet. It's resting. You walk further. There are no animals now. Even the insects are scarce. A few buzzing shapes flit by, confused and few. You follow a dragonfly, the last of its kind, perhaps until it vanishes into a gap between two stones that might have once been the mouth of a burrow. You stand in what used to be an ecosystem. You listen. Nothing. Even silence gets quiet here. Historians still debate what caused this final wave of vanishing. Was it climate oxygen levels? The dominoes that fell after the prior extinctions? Or was it just the momentum of collapse? A slow tumble toward absence. You glance up. The clouds are moving fast now, wind picking up. A sign? Or just the weather? Somewhere far from here, something else is beginning. But not here. Here, the planet is wiping the slate. Not in anger, not in panic, just in preparation. You lower yourself to the ground. Hands on cracked stone, knees pressed to fossil dust. There's nothing left to chase. No sounds to follow, no shadows to dodge. Only the earth itself pulling its breath inward again. And waiting. It will rise again. You know that. It always does. But this space between is sacred. This is the echo that follows the last footfall. The ripple after the final leap. The smudge where the fossil didn't quite form. You stay for a while, not moving, letting your own breath fade into this hush. Because if there's anything that still survives here, anything older than bones or bark, it's the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't mourn what was, just makes room for what will be. So here you are, at the quiet end of a story most people never knew started. You've walked through a world before snow, before mammals, before anything had teeth sharp enough to demand respect. You follow shadows that existed long before mammoths trampled frozen plains, long before humans invented fire, long before the planet wore any shape we'd recognize as familiar. You watched forests rise that couldn't rot, and trees that photosynthesized with their trunks. You met creatures that had eyes before fear and limbs before the idea of fleeing. You saw rivers that flowed backward and skies ruled by insects the size of dinner plates. You stood in the breath between extinction events where the earth paused not to cry, not to scream, but to reset. And you saw it all without a single mammoth tusk in sight. Because they came later, much later. They stomped through snow that hadn't yet fallen in the chapters you just explored. Their shaggy coats and curved tusks are only recent scribbles on Earth's journal. Before them, there were ages of silence, ages of too much oxygen, ages of teeth being invented, ages of vision trying to mean something. You've walked in the shadow of the ages, now gently. Before the modern world roars back into your ears, take a moment to sit in that stillness, to remember what came before. Not the glory of dinosaurs, not the empire of mammals, but the long humming mystery of the world, when it was just beginning to think.